Someone smashing $5,000 worth of Le Creuset roasters.
And nothing happened to this guy.
Our neighborhoods are not safer, the schools are not safer.
Today on The Lens, we're gonna talk about theft in Canada and in the US. The BBC has pointed out that Canada became a car theft capital of the world. And in the States, especially in California, it seems like shoplifting has become a regular occurrence. So Greg, give me your thoughts on what's happening with all this theft. It seems like it's been really, going down south since the pandemic. Do you think that's, do you have the same feeling where you're at, south of the border?
Yeah, it's a joke. There's been this trend, and California passed in 2014, I want to say, Proposition 47, which basically the whole goal of this was to lower the populations in our jails and prisons. And so Proposition 47 was put up to vote in a very deceptive way, by the way, because a lot of people vote by they don't study the propositions. They go to the polls and then they're looking at the ballot and they kind of make their decisions on what the description says. And they were calling this Prop 47 the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act, which if anybody saw that on its face, they would think, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to check yes on it. But essentially what it did was it took certain felonies and reduced them to misdemeanors, and certain misdemeanors, and they're basically just citations now instead of jail. And they actually took some misdemeanors and turned them into infractions. So they lowered the severeness of the severity of certain crimes just to reduce populations in jails and prisons. And combine that with, like, say, district attorneys that aren't willing to prosecute, and it's a recipe for disaster, and our neighborhoods are not safer, the schools are not safer. The quality of life has been lowered dramatically. It's a travesty.
That's so tragic, because over here in Canada, it seems like you could steal a car and you get a slap on the wrist. Like, there are stories where they catch a criminal, he steals a car, goes to the courthouse, gets out of the courthouse, and I believe he stole a cop car, leaving the courthouse.
I saw that on the news. So yeah, the push is, if it's a nonviolent crime, why are we putting these people in jail? And it's just blowing up in our faces. I mean, it's it's a shell game with statistics and crime stats, because you figure when they turn certain felony crimes into misdemeanors, now the politicians can say felony crimes are down in California, right? And then when the victims of these crimes aren't getting the service that they deserve, there's been this kind of defund kind of push to defund the police. It was going on for a while, starting in 2020. So there's not as many cops on the streets, and the calls for service have increased. So a lot of people aren't even calling the police anymore. So now on paper, because these crimes are not being reported, again, crime rates are going down, but it's really not. It's unreported crimes are going up.
And how's car theft over there in California?
Just thefts in general are way up, because again, right now, especially in certain cities like LA, San Francisco, where you have district attorneys that aren't issuing these cases, they're not even going to court, they're just dropping the charges. It's sending the message to criminals that you can commit these crimes and get away with it. And this is exactly what we're seeing with, these mobs that are rushing, department stores and with armloads of Louis Vuittons running out the door. If there's no accountability, they're just going to continue on. It's a horrible, horrible turn of events here in California.
I think we have some video. Let's pull up some of these crimes and let's watch it together. Wow, look at that. So, like, this looks like a mob, right? And they're probably in some shopping mall. It looks like it, a flash mob. If I'm a store owner, and we spoke about this before in another podcast about self-defense. So, are you allowed to protect your property? Like, in theory, could a store owner or security guard shoot these individuals or no?
No. You're not in California, and I think probably most states, you're not allowed to use deadly force to protect against property loss. That is, again, to be used in self-defense against potential death or great bodily harm to yourself or others. These poor people, I mean, it's horrible. In California, you can effect a citizen's arrest, and you can use whatever force is what they deem reasonable to effect a citizen's arrest.
So just say, like, I'm trying to think of like an expensive item, like a watch, right? It's small, it's more portable, and watches could go for millions of dollars. So imagine someone steals like $100,000 watch, and they come to my store. I can't shoot the guy?
No.
Okay, because in Canada you definitely can't do that. But I was wondering in the States if you could do it. Okay, so let another situation. So that's the store situation. Now imagine someone enters my home, and this expensive watch is on the kitchen table, and he grabs it and he's running out. There too, I'm not allowed to shoot him. Correct? Or is it different in the house setting versus a business setting?
So, like in California, again, in a lot of states in the United States have what they call the Castle Act, where it's implied that if someone's breaking into your house while you're home, that your life is in danger. So if you were, like, say, kicking back watching TV and you could hear noises and you went up to investigate and you could see someone kind of breaking through your door or crawling through a window, then at that moment, it's reasonable to assume that your life is in danger and you could use your gun. But if you walk in on the guy and he grabs your watch off the counter and now he's running towards the door, there's really no threat to you. It's just a property loss.
And what is the punishment for a burglary in California?
Well, it's a felony. So each crime in our penal code, as you read the description of the crime, then it goes down these subsections and everything, and then it'll tell you what the prescribed punishment is. But I'm just going to say, for a felony in California, the minimum, if you're going to serve time, it would be a minimum of 2 years in prison, and it would go up from there. But there's also a lot of shenanigans that go on in courts with the attorneys and everything. So depending on the person's criminal record, if there's priors, or if there's any priors of violence or anything, it could increase the sentence. Or if it's a first-time offense, they may just say, we're going to give this guy time served for the time he spent in jail waiting for the trial, and then we're going to put him on probation for 5 years. So it wouldn't be unrealistic for them not really to see any time at all behind bars. And again, in California now, when it comes to, burglary of a residence is still a felony in California. It's weird saying that. But again, there's such a push to keep what they call nonviolent offenders out of jails and prisons that it wouldn't shock me at all if they just received probation.
But what's the definition of nonviolent? For me, destroying property like this, smashing a store, that's violence in my mind.
Well, yeah, and I would agree with you from that angle. But unless they're beating you with the merchandise, the state considers it nonviolent.
Came in, grabbed it, picked it up, and then started running.
With a water carbonating system in hand and 3 employees in pursuit, This grab-and-dash suspect escapes with the $350 appliance. Just another day at Gourmet Warehouse.
I had a guy come in and put a full all-clad fry pan straight down his pants. We're talking thousands and thousands of dollars a week walking out my door.
Staff at Karen McSherry's specialty cookware store on East Hastings besieged by theft. They do their best to stop those who bypass the till while dealing with daily disorder. That's the sound of someone smashing $5,000 worth of Le Creuset roasters.
Can you imagine that? $5,000, Greg, and nothing happened to this guy.
Yeah, it's and that would be a felony vandalism here. But again, thank God, you know, the voters voted for Prop 36 in California, which will get rid of Prop 47, which is what has ruined our state. And they're also making their voices heard when it comes to the district attorneys. I know LA just, they voted out a horrible, horrible DA. And hopefully the person replacing him will do a good job of, again, putting some accountability on these crimes.
Unfortunately, this happened here in Canada. Let's see what they say if they were able to catch this guy or if he gets away with it.
People left to continually repeat, offend, and there's no consequence. Catch and release, catch and release. It makes me insane.
Gourmet Warehouse is spending tens of thousands of dollars on full-time security and has installed metal shutters. Still, its founder says crime is catastrophic and escalating without control.
We don't report it because it's not worth it. By the time they do come, they're gone.
That's so funny because you just talked about that earlier, how people are not even reporting crimes.
Yeah. And again, it's the unfortunate thing about that is it lowers the crime stats. You know, if you have 500 burglaries in a city and only 3 of them are getting reported, you know, it makes it look like these laws are effective and they're doing a good job, but it's not. I mean, instead, the victims have given up. The cities have given up on the victims, and the consumers are ultimately the ones that pay because, you know, the retail establishments are having to increase their prices to make up for their losses, and then ultimately, a lot of these businesses, I mean, places like CVS, Walmart, you know, Walgreens, they're leaving cities because they're not profiting. You know, it's just lowering the quality of life for everyone.
It's funny, you would think that big business would put pressure on government to change things, eh?
Sure they are, but I don't know. We're in strange times, that's for sure.
Patrol officers are very well versed in knowing who the chronic repeat offenders are, and sometimes we're able to pick them off just by hearing their description. So it's so important to report these crimes when they do happen. We completely understand the frustration.
That kills me. Chronic repeat offenders. There shouldn't be chronic repeat offenders. Like, the fact that there are chronic repeat offenders shows that there's a problem over here in Canada in our system, because like it has to be jail, not bail. This is insane. And the worst part is they don't even need to pay anything for bail. They just get out.
Yeah, I know this whole no cash bail thing. And the way it used to be in California, and hopefully, again, Prop 36, I'm hoping will put an end to the way it is now. The way it used to be, it was a simple shoplift, like just a misdemeanor shoplift, it would, the suspect would be issued a misdemeanor citation, which is a promise to appear in court, and then they would be released from the store or from wherever. I mean, we could actually, if we wanted to, take them to the station and cite them there and release them from the station. If we were able to prove intent to steal, which used to be a felony, it was actually a burglary. And like say they had a booster bag, you know, like say a bag stuffed down their pants that they pulled out and then started loading up with merchandise. The bag would be considered a burglary tool, so we could arrest them for burglary and actually put them in jail for the felony. And then we also had a section, it was like an enhancer for petty theft. Petty theft is 484 in the penal code, and then /666 would be petty petty theft with a prior. So if that person, we found out during the records check, had been arrested for any type of theft before and actually was convicted and served any time at all for that offense, then that automatically became a burglary. It would be petty theft with a prior, which was a modified burglary, so to speak. So again, even if they were just stealing, something worth $30, it would have been a felony, and they'd hit the pit.
So here's a little controversial question for you. Clearly, letting people get away with it is not working, and we'll see if putting them in jail works. But what are your thoughts on like what they do in Singapore with like public caning? Do you think physical punishment or physical public display of punishment would work?
I mean, I don't mind a little humiliation, as far as there have been cities in the past that have put up billboards with the faces of the arrested offenders up on walls. But I think corporal punishment although the consumer in me likes that idea, I think, it's a little over the top for the United States to do that.
In Singapore, they have a very low crime rate. So maybe there's something Canadians and Americans can learn from them, right?
No, and I just don't think America or Canada, especially Canada, you guys are very peaceful people, would ever go for anything like that. Like I said, inside of me, I'm thinking, I would kind of like that, but it would never happen. I think just having a consequence and some accountability, that would put a big dent in what we're seeing right now. I mean, I know it would, because it wasn't like this before Prop 47 hit, in California. These people there needs to be a consequence to their actions. That's how we learn. You're a little kid, you touch a hot stove, you burn yourself, you don't touch it anymore. And being paraded out in front of a whole store full of customers with handcuffs on and being put in a police car, that's pretty humiliating in itself.
Well, right now here in Canada, we have an issue where a lot of criminal organizations, they hire younger kids, juveniles, so basically anyone under 18, with the thought process that they could commit the crime and get away with it. Do you guys have a similar issue in the States?
Yes, I mean, there's always, especially a lot of the drug dealers will use juveniles to like shuttle drugs back and forth because of that reason. In the West, the juveniles are treated a lot differently as far in the criminal justice system. So yeah, it's a problem.
Maybe in 2024, 2025, moving forward, that we might have to lower the age of eligibility to be in prison?
Yeah, I mean, we have, in the United States, you can be charged as an adult for certain crimes, like homicides, for example, but I don't see that happening for property crimes.
So if you're underage and you commit a homicide, how many years in jail would the offender get?
Well, yeah, and that would be prison. But again, it depends on the case. The judge is the ultimate authority that sentenced the person. But, we've had juvenile offenders get life in prison. They were charged as an adult and then they received an adult sentence. We've got, people that were doing mass murders and stuff that were young kids at the time that are still in prison, and they probably won't see the light of day in their lifetime.
When you say life in prison, does life actually mean 25 years?
Until you're no longer with us.
Okay. No, because sometimes you hear like triple life sentence. Like, can you clarify what that means?
Well, that's just, when they do things like that, triple life sentence, it's mainly to just keep you in prison because, they'll have parole hearings and everything. And it's just basically to make it more difficult for that offender to be released on parole or something. If you got a triple life sentence, you're definitely not going to see the light of day. And there's also like life in prison with no opportunity for parole. It's the same thing. But usually if it's a triple life sentence, it's because, like, say they committed a homicide at this location, and then they went to this town here, committed another homicide. So you're getting sentenced for multiple victims, multiple crimes.
So let's hear what Proposition 36 might solve in California.
Proposition 36 on the November ballot would change California law when it comes to punishments for drug use and for theft. Under current law, as long as you only steal $950 or less, that's a misdemeanor. That's sort of a citation. Even if you do it a dozen times in an afternoon, that's a dozen different citations. Prop 36 would change that. For those who are offended multiple times, you could end up in state prison. Plus, it would start a new category where if you're a drug user, you will have a choice, either go to state prison or go to court-ordered rehabilitation. Now, it's supported by the California District Attorneys Association, California Retailers Association. They say crime is out of hand. We need to do something. We need to get tough. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, he's opposed. He says it will result in mass incarceration, particularly for Black and brown Californians. Prop 36, really the marquee ballot measure for the state, getting tough on crime.
So a lot to unpack there. Can you give us your thoughts on what he just talked about?
I agree with everything he said. I mean, again, Proposition 47, which 36 is going to correct. It's going to basically go back to the way it used to be, was an experiment, one of many experiments that have failed. The whole point of Prop 47 was to lower the populations in our prisons, and which it has. And now people that should be behind bars are ruining our lives. They're going into these stores, stealing everything. Again, you should see some of there's whole shopping centers in San Francisco that are vacant now because of this type of, the theft. They're not making any money. They're losing their businesses. There's a really nice area in Santa Monica. It's on 3rd Street. It's called the 3rd Street Promenade. Most of the buildings there are boarded up now, because of what Prop 47 did. These people are going in with immunity and stealing whatever they want. And with drugs, Gavin Newsom's, his thoughts are to provide these people that are, doing drugs and, dealing with illegal drugs, give them safe places to do their drugs, give them clean needles and everything. And anybody who knows anything about addiction knows that that's enabling. What's the incentive to get off of drugs if the government's basically saying, hey, it's okay that you're doing drugs. Here's a clean crack pipe, or here's a clean needle. And a lot of those people that are, again, on the streets, living the life of, drugs, they're also the ones that are going into our homes and stealing. They're committing other crimes to feed that habit. So these people need to be held accountable. That's all there is to it.
Hopefully by 2025, you'll see a little decrease in the crime rate in California. I'm not so hopeful about what's happening here in Canada. I think it's going to be a mess for the next couple of years till we have a nice change in government, but we'll see what happens in 2025. As always, Greg, thank you for your insight. And for those of you who are new to our channel, please subscribe and check out these other great videos.